Welcome everyone. This is so glad this is just such a great group of folks to be joining us tonight. And we're really glad to be able to share some of the results of the feedback that you gave us. So speaking of sharing, let me share my screen here and to have a conversation about the conversation that we've started with you about how you all are doing during this time of COVID and your relationship to the temple during this time. So with that, what I'd like to do is, is just go over a little bit the agenda. First of all, we're going to get a little bit more feedback from you. We're going to talk to you a little bit about what we heard from you from the survey, what we learned, and what we're already doing to address some of those concerns, and then get some more of your input as we start to rethink what I'm calling virtual Emanuel 2.0, recognizing that the shelter-in-place rules that we keep thinking are going to be maybe a month or two away are probably in some way or another going to be with us for a while, and we're starting to really do some planning on a little bit more long-term planning for that. So I do want to get your input, and we'll use this primarily through the chat function. I've got up on the screen here how to use the chat and how to send us information via the chat. I think at this point people have been on far too many Zoom calls. I don't need to belabor this, but I do want to give you that. And speaking of the chat, I am just going to stop sharing for just a moment. And if you check the chat, I just put a link in there. And if you click on that link, so if everyone just goes to the chat room and click on that link, just ask for your thoughts on one word that kind of describes how you're feeling about your relationship with Emanuel now. And again, this is not a presentation where we're looking to sell you or sugarcoat it. We really just want to hear what you have to say. And you know, Randy, we were talking earlier, it's interesting. You're kind of in an interesting position to answer that question. Do you have any thoughts on this while folks are answering themselves?
I sure do. You know, I've been a congregant for more than 25 years and then joined the staff of Emanu-El about a year ago. And, you know, it's very different under the hood. And all I can say, the word that comes to mind is admiration. People work very hard, and I've been so impressed with how the synagogue has pivoted in these times. And so that's the word that comes to mind for me, is admiration.
Great. And you can see some of the other responses coming in, and you can see the mix of words as well as people are responding. For those, I know a couple folks are on the phone, continual, inclusive, appreciative, both connected and disconnected at the same time. And I think that's interesting. You'll see that, I think, during the presentation. Randy, anything I'm missing from the chat? Any other responses coming in from there?
Nope, not at this point.
Okay. And big as well. That's an interesting one. I may ask at the end for a debrief on that. Okay. And good. Inspired. Okay. I'm going to quit while I'm ahead and have inspired being the center word, because we've really been inspired, not just by the effort of our staff, but really from
I do want to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I missed two, and I want to make sure that everyone is included. Two words that are mentioned in the chat: feeling good and feeling included.
Good. So you see that mix where a lot of it is very much on the positive side, but also there's a little bit of tension there, and I think we'll see that as we go to the results. I'll make sure those two words are added, Randy, before we publish these results. That's great. Thank you for that. Well, as I said, part of this effort, this survey is really part of an overall effort to be transparent and to make sure that we're continually in conversation with you, our members, and our community. This is actually the third town hall that we have done since the shelter-in-place orders. We often go through years where we don't do any, or maybe just the annual meeting, and that's it. So we've done the survey and these 3 town halls, and we've got another one planned for later this month. Hasn't even been announced yet, Randy. I don't think so. The people on this call are the first to hear about it. We'll be doing a deeper dive into what we're doing uh, over the high holy days as well. So we really want to continue in that conversation. And the survey is something that is a reform movement wide survey that would really allowed us to take the pulse of not only what's happening here at Emanu-El, but what's happening organization wide. And the thing that I will tell you to preview a little bit is that what's happening here is very similar to what's happening in other organizations. Our responses were not that different than other synagogues. Before I get into the results, I want to answer one question that always comes up whenever you do these surveys. Are the results accurate? Are they valid? We certainly hear this whenever you look at a political poll, who's up and down. And I think in this case, I can say with a good degree of confidence, the answer is yes. We really had a large number of households represented. Hundreds of people individually did as well. In looking at the diversity of folks that replied, it really looked like it matched our synagogue. So for example, on ages, it matched up ages of people who responded, matched up very nicely with the ages of folks who are actually in the synagogue. Skewed, I'll be honest, a little bit on the older side to folks in the 60s and 70s, and a little less in the 20s and 30s, but in the 40s, 50s, and 60s is almost right on. So from what I've seen as statistical models, the results you're going to see probably have about a 5% margin of error. And I'm probably being conservative there, probably is a little closer to 3% margin of error. So what you're going to see, I think, is pretty representative. And we're going to break this down. Randy actually helped me with this. My original version of these slides had like tons and tons of graphs and charts. And Randy said, well, why don't we try and break it down a little bit into categories? And so really focusing in on how people are feeling during these COVID times, during the shelter in place, really in 3 areas: about kind of that community sense of belonging, and I'll talk to that. Randy will talk about how they're feeling about the programs and services that we've been running. And then finally, Randy will talk a little bit about the future, and we'll, as I said, get some more input from you as well. So first of all, in that area of community and belonging, the classic question, right, we get now in every survey: would you recommend joining or remaining, or recommend Emanu-El to a friend or colleague? And the great news is, I think, is that the answer is a positive one. Over 90% say yes to that, and even more positive that most of the people saying yes are in that strongly agree, not just like, yeah, no, I would, but yeah, I really would. Now, what's interesting, when we asked, has that changed since the shelter in place? For most folks, that positive feeling is about the same, but we see about a quarter of the folks who answered it really was something that was more positive for them, that is actually it caused them to maybe want to recommend the temple even more so. Now, of course, you can do math as well as I can. That quarter of folks who were in the negative area as well. Again, saw a little bit this in your comments. And there were just so many interesting comments of kind of the good, the okay, and the not okay. One, I'll just read it. So impressed at the outreach and thoughtfulness of Emanuel and the clergy throughout this time, the virtual services, the calling each and every congregant. The synagogue has really showed its stuff. Other folks are saying, hey, I liked you before, I like you now, about the same. And of course, there are some folks who have commented on some negative things. Here's one representative sampling about kind of the technology and the quality of the streaming services, things of that nature. So we recognize that. There were probably about half the people gave these comments, but Randy, we've heard so many just great stories.
Absolutely. And, reading some of these, if you want to call them, open-ended comments, testimonials, really reminds me of a call I had with a congregant recently, actually, as Passover was approaching. And her husband, had passed a year ago. Her kids lived on the East Coast and she was alone. And I called to see if she'd like, a delivery of a Passover Seder package. And she was so moved. She told me she almost burst into tears because she didn't know what she was going to do to mark the holiday. She was so grateful. And so, it was a really poignant conversation. And it does show that we have been making a difference.
Yeah. And I think that um, is represented here as well. One of the questions that was asked is, since COVID-19, has the temple helped you develop a deeper sense of belonging, connection, meaning, higher purpose? The question's a little bit longer than what's on the screen here. You see a good third of folks said that it really had. Now, again, we're not in a sales mode here. We want to be transparent and honest. In our surveys, we've done similar surveys to the congregation beforehand, and it was much higher. And so for a couple of the folks in our one word answer before who said they're feeling a little disconnected, we're recognizing that the literal distance that we have is making those deeper connections harder to do. And so for every story that Randy, like the one that Randy just told, we do recognize there are folks that are finding it a little harder to have that deeper sense. Randy, that's kind of people's kind of overall feelings. Talk to us a little bit about how people are participating in the actual programs themselves and your takeaways on these.
Sure, sure. Well, absolutely. Well, not unexpectedly, during the pandemic, participation has been impacted in all categories. And you can see in the chart on the left, participation pre-COVID, while on the right, the chart shows how participation has been impacted during the pandemic. And not surprisingly, the greatest declines have been in our social programming, which is on the left in dark blue, social justice activities in the pink, and family experiences in the green. We actually, though, see much smaller dips in our services and worship, which are indicated in the orange bar, along with our education and learning experiences in light blue.
Great. And I was just answering a text from Alan, who said, when do we want comments? Please feel free to type them in the chat as we go along. Actually make it a little easier at the end to address things, to know what's on folks' minds. So even if we hold off answering them till the end, helpful to have them as you think of them. That way you won't forget about it at the end. So that is how people are feeling as we sit here today. But the survey also asked some questions, Randy, about the future as well. And here again, we've got a little bit of that mix that we've been seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that some of the takeaways are that people want to stay involved, but we need to understand that people are struggling with finances, jobs, childcare, elder care, anxieties, and whether they're getting enough value for their membership. These are really truly difficult times all around, and we need to continue to demonstrate our relevance in people's lives.
Yeah. So it really was, some of my big takeaways, and Randy, I look forward to yours as well, is that people want to stay. They want to stay involved. They want to be members. They're looking forward to be members now and in the future. And they feel good about Emanuel. And there are just great stories, like some of the ones you saw in the comments, like the one Randy mentioned, that have really touched people's lives in a way that, in a weird way, almost we couldn't. There was another story that comes to mind of a wedding of someone who was going to be in a first responder. And it was really hard to do with all the restrictions on ceremonies and things of that nature. But the person was in a position where they wanted to get married before they entered their new first responder job, worried that they may not get a chance to later. And so we just looked at the rules and tried to do everything creatively to make that happen. Rabbi Rodich was able to do that in a way that was safe, but also really was something that person will remember. But also, as Randy said, people are missing that sense of connection, that sense of community, each other, and involvement is down. And so we've got to do some things differently. as we enter a bit more of this prolonged cycle to make a greater difference. And I'll be asking actually this group for their suggestions on that in just a moment. Now we have, as I said, we've had these results now for a little bit, and we really have been working hard to do some things already to address them.
You're ready for me,
Yeah.
David?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I do want everyone to know that, your comments have really made a difference. We're now especially focusing on programming that helps to enhance that sense of belonging and that sense of community. A couple of examples here. Number one, we're improving the live stream experience for services and are in the process of installing cameras in our main sanctuary. Our High Holy Day services, for example, won't be presented in the Zoom Facebook Live format we've been hosting for Shabbat since March. There will be more opportunities for participation and interaction, and they will be beautifully and professionally produced so we can experience the majesty of these services together. And it won't just be for the High Holy Days. We'll be using this new technology for Shabbat and other services going forward. Second big thing, we're getting ready to launch something called our Emanuel Babayit groups. And these small groups are a new way for you to find your people at Emanu-El, get to know a small group of fellow congregants well, and help make our large congregation feel small. One of Emanu-El's strengths is the breadth and scope of this large, wonderful congregation, and our Babayit groups are an opportunity to help you find a sense of home and belonging within our community. And these groups are going to be launching next week, so stay tuned in your inboxes so you can sign up. We've got about 25 lay-led groups ready to go, reflecting a wide variety of interests, everything from challah baking to boomers to knitting to biking to if you like Brooklyn and so on. So keep your eyes on your inboxes for information about that. And finally, over the summer, the Youth and Family Ed Department has been learning a lot about techniques for making distance learning more engaging for children. And they've restructured the 6th and 7th grade curriculum for the fall in response to our COVID reality. So that's going to be a new curriculum launching in the fall.
Great. Well, as I said before, we'll have a general kind of Q&A section, but just I would love to get this group's feedback. You've already, thank you for joining. You've already been seeing 2 sneak previews of stuff that hasn't even gone out to the general membership yet. So that's a little bit of your bonus for logging in today, which is great. But I would love to get a sense from you of, what we've done during COVID-19 that for you has made an impact. What are the things that have struck out at you so that we make sure that we keep doing them? And what are the things that you really miss the most that we can work hard on recreating? And I'm going to stop sharing this slide. If you can just put those in the chat, and I will share another screen. Hold on a second. Okay. Okay. So Randy, as you're seeing ideas come in, or if any are coming in, I'll log them so everyone can see them.
Okay.
And as you were saying, Randy, we really have been looking at these results as we're looking at our fall programming and really have been trying to be responsive.
Okay, so I'm going to share one thing that's made a difference: phone calls from clergy to elderly relatives, checking in on her.
Great.
Another comment, as a member who lives in Palo Alto, not close, it's been a real plus for services, Torah study,
right,
presentations, and Havdalah. In pre-COVID times, this person would only have participated in about 10% of those events.
Right. Got it. Yeah.
Another comment. Uh, Ann Rubin is appreciated taking adult education classes via Zoom, such as Rabbi Jonathan's recent book class.
Great. Anything else while we're doing this before we go to a general Q&A?
And another comment, Alan is impressed at how the clergy and staff have handled the technology so smoothly, and congregants have gotten more comfortable too. Terry Krause is grateful for the exposure to the Havdalah ceremony, which is new for some people.
Well, that's good. I will let you in on a secret. That's one we keep debating on. So good to hear, get some actual feedback on it. Thank you. Okay. Anything else?
And Moshe Rader seconds Ann's suggestion, would love to have more Zoom discussion classes about educational topics. And on the subject of Havdalah, Alan would like to keep Havdalah and a number of things even when we get back to normal.
Right. And Alan, I think that point about continuing the use of distance technology even when we're in person, so that we pick up the folks. A couple of comments have said, I just couldn't have done it if I had to go to the temple to do it. Allowing the folks to have that extra special feeling when you're there in a group of people, but also be able to participate after, something that we're looking at as well. Okay, great. Well, thank you for that. These are really good comments and suggestions, and are just so helpful to us. Anything else, Randy, before I take it back to general Q&A?
I don't see anything.
Okay. So I'm just going to stop the share, and I am going to put up the.
I do have one more thing.
Sure.
Just saw a comment from Terry Krause about she's guessing that the other offerings that have been debated, whether or not we should continue, are the Cantor's Hebrew classes and music moments, the Soothe Your Soul music moments. And she feels they're so nice, she would hate to see them cut out. So I'm sure the Cantors want to hear that from you.
Well, all kidding aside, it is good to know. It's sometimes easy to tell by attendance or how many clicks, but that doesn't tell the intensity of the feelings about these things. And that's why doing these town halls are so important.
And for the record, Alan agrees with Terry. Alan Warsh.
Okay, I'm not putting that. I'm typing on that slide. I'm not. Didn't feel worth it to put it back up again, but I am typing these comments on it. So much appreciated. Okay, so I think given the size of the group, you should feel free to take yourself off of mute. I just put this. I'm going to stop sharing in a second. I just put this on just to remind people. Watch your inboxes for our next town hall on August 26th from 5 to 6, where we'll be diving deeper into our High Holy Day experience, previewing the website portal that will allow you to really engage with all the different things, and talking a bit more about particularly those special individualized moments that really go beyond, quote unquote, just the service. Okay. So feel free to raise your hand physically, verbally, using the Q&A. Let's see. I think Mark.
Hi. A couple of questions. How many people actually answered the survey?
It was over 400. I don't remember the exact amount.
Would you consider that a good number?
Yeah, it's about 25% of the people it was sent to. And I don't remember the percentage of households it represented, but it was up there as well. When, I looked at the some of the analysis about the percentages of the responses and matching them up with margin of error, that percentage of response plus some of the other factors that indicated that we were on target. So one, the demographic match was similar to the match of actual temple members. When we asked things like, how do you feel now, versus it matched up with other surveys we've done internally. So there weren't any crazy results based on past results. So it does feel like it was an accurate. Uh,
The other question I have is, and if this is off topic, we'll just stop it. I'm curious, since we got a very positive response in terms of, wanting to belong to the temple, etc. Is that reflecting? How is that reflecting in terms of dues?
yeah. So Randy, I'll make a comment and let you chime in as well, since it's under your area. Here's what we're finding with membership is that it goes historically. It's gone in kind of three batches. The first batch is that initial batch of folks who are very connected, the true believers who are getting a lot of value. The second batch comes in a little over the summer, particularly with YFE, registrations and preschool registrations. And then the third batch is right before High Holy Days. And so we're really in the first batch phase and kind of maybe in the middle of the second batch phase. The first batch phase was great, quite honest. Trended at or really above where we were, in previous years. The second phase, we're kind of in the middle of it. I'll be honest, it is a little slower. And as Randy said, we do need to, prove to folks that we are continuing to make a difference in people's lives. And the High Holy Day phase, we're not quite there yet. We'll see how that goes. But we recognize that, as Randy said, people are struggling, and that we need to be creative about how we're helping people in their lives. Randy, do you have?
Not much else to add. We're cautiously optimistic. We know there's work to be
Right.
done. Things, there was a burst of, membership renewals. We're a little bit of a plateau, so that we do know that there is work to be done, but we are cautiously optimistic.
And a shout out to Rachel Melman, who's online and on our membership committee. So thank you for the work you're doing on that to help exactly with that effort. Alan, I think I saw your hand up. Yes.
Yeah, I put it in the chat, but this is a question about the drops in the virtual world versus the data you had from before. As I said, I didn't think those drops were that radically low down, so I was pleased. But I also wanted to know, since you looked at the other URJ synagogues, for large and small synagogues always behave a little differently. Are those kind of drops comparable if you sample 2 or 3 of the the over 2,000 kinds of synagogues, or 1,000? Are we better, or more drop or less drop? I guess is the question.
Well, on the one thing about this survey compared to others, they did do a breakdown based on size, but there just weren't, honestly, my take is there just weren't enough synagogues participating where the breakdown on size to me was
Okay.
relevant. That said, the breakdown that they did show really didn't show much of a difference between large, small, and medium. And that is consistent with what we've seen from the URJ member surveys that they've been now doing for 4 or 5 years. We now have, responses from, tens of thousands of members nationwide. And I think one of the things that we've learned is there's less of a difference in how people react for large, small, urban, rural than we might expect. There's some, but it's not as radical, I think, as I would have thought, just kind of guessing. And our results, I think, were consistent with results at other.
Okay, that's what you had said. I just wanted the large. So if I can just add one other comment. Yeah. So I am active in Torah study, both at Emanuel and at Beth Am down here. And we had a little bump of numbers being bigger than typical when Rabbi Singer, because I'm not sure that reasons other than people find it easier not to drive and park, and those can help. But the other thing is, I know at Beth Am, several people who are members at both places like me, they wouldn't come down here like I wouldn't go there as much. So we actually had increases just for Torah study. I'm not making a broad statement because of the convenience and the distancing that we benefited from the virtual.
Andy, any thoughts on that? Do you hear that from other folks or see it in other data? You've been looking at the numbers of people program by program who participate.
You mean the ease of participation because
Yeah.
Well, the overall big numbers, they're down a little, but
Right.
but I can illustrate Torah study, which is more granular than your graph. That they actually had. I haven't watched it week to week, but we were all pleased that people who moved away who enjoyed a rabbi at our rabbi or at Rabbi Martyr, they would actually. And some of those people are on the call here who wouldn't drive down here, aren't they?
Absolutely. That's one of the silver linings of this situation that we're in is, it has opened up participation in classes to a lot of people who, have difficulty coming to night classes or, heading in from another part of town. And that's one of the reasons that whenever this situation ends, we are going to continue the aspects of the distance learning that we've been forced to put into place through this crisis, because there is certainly, a value to that.
Thank you. That's it.
Frank,
Thank you.
I see your hand. I'm going to take you off of mute, and if you still have a question, go for it.
Yeah, so it's more of a comment than a question. I saw,
Sure.
when we were talking before, that, a lot of people had talked about various classes and things that are offered. And I guess the thing, and I don't know the answer to this, and it sounds like these Babayit groups may be a move in that direction. But for me, what I'm lacking most, not just from the synagogue, but in life in general right now, is connection to people, and especially community connection.
Yeah.
So the more that the congregation can help find ways to provide that, that's more of what I'm looking for in this day and age than specifically, classes or things like that. There are tons of organizations that I can attend classes from and have. And so I think just in terms of the unique role that the congregation plays for its membership, I think really finding ways to connect us and create a sense of community, especially in socially distanced, isolated times, especially for people like myself who live alone, I think that would be highly desired. And so again, these Babayit groups may be a move in that direction, but moving forward, obviously, worship is a big part of what a synagogue provides. But beyond that, classes are nice, but I would rather have a focus of attention more on ways to connect us and help us feel connected than on providing education. And I know they're not mutually exclusive. I hope I'm making sense here in terms of what I'm conveying.
You're making total sense, and that absolutely is a priority, and you're not alone in, and that need for community is profound. And the Babayit groups are definitely a means of addressing that. So I hope you'll participate in one of the 25 groups we're getting ready to launch next week.
And you'll also, as you see stuff coming up for the High Holy Days, you'll see an effort to do that as well. Randy was exactly right that one of the things we really want to stress is that the High Holy Days are not just a slightly fancier version of the Zoom services that you've seen. And really, the clergy and engagement team really, I think when you see, you'll be pleased with the types of things they're doing to address exactly that concern. Exactly that concern. So I think I am quickly looking at any other questions, comments. I'm quickly scanning. It looks like we got them going once, going twice. look for, first of all, look online for Judy's class. I was too busy talking to look for the link, but we were chatting about that early on. It is always a winner, and she's always a great way to be connected. We hope to see some of you in a few weeks when we are doing another one of these town halls to talk about the High Holy Days. And we hope to continue with your ideas about staying connected. This has been the survey, and this has really just been helpful. We just simply can't do this without without your help or participation. So thank you for that.
I'll just add, David and
Yeah.
Randy, that I bet you get it. I mean, I know how things work, is people tend to complain more than they compliment, and so you always have a feel. You guys and the clergy have a feel for what's on people's mind, but it's kind of ad hoc. I really think the organized way you do that is worthy of praising the synagogue in general, but the two of you and the leadership to do these and doing it on a regular basis, not too frequent, but an often, so you can develop intelligent information. So the numbers that you got to respond can only get better, in numbers. I mean, I think statistically it was significant. I mean, I hope you agree. You got plenty. You're not going to get 80%. So, but anyway, thank you for having that idea of being more formal in collecting information.
You need both, and I'm glad that the two ways of communicating and getting information are syncing up. So I'm going to let Alan have the last word because it was a positive word, and I appreciate it. And I want to thank everyone for their time and logging on, and hope to see you soon, but hope to virtually see you soon, even sooner than that. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye now.